CLI and a cross-platform IDE for C and C++. Download now.
Hi, yeah, I'm Paul. I came up with this talk while I was walking my dog this morning. That's typically where or when I do most of my best thinking. So I hope this turns out to have been a good call. I work on QDoc, which is Qt's documentation generator, and I've spent about a decade writing software documentation and building tools that produce it. I have a position when it comes to AI and docs, which is the documentation is for humans first. That's not so to me, that's a core design principle. And I think that's also how we need to make documentation work also for AI. It's not the other way around. Now, the problem, as I see it, is that LLMs read our docs and they generate code from what they find. And when they get it wrong, the failure mode looks nothing like a human getting it wrong. So human hits a compiler error and they go back to the IDE, they adjust their code. Probably that their IDE is going to tell them before that they're going to get a compiler error. Well, but an LLM produces something that looks right, compiles maybe, it runs even, and then suddenly plausible-looking code with undefined behavior ships, runs, and gives someone a very bad week. Our users are already doing this. That's not a prediction. It's, I don't do hope-driven engineering. And I keep seeing this instinct, which is, someone looks at LLM hallucinations and they say, oh, the docs we have aren't AI ready. We need to fix the docs for this. So the proposal then ends up being adding AI-specific metadata, ownership semantics, thread safety annotations, pattern, and anti-pattern blocks, just bolt it on and get it out the door. And while I believe that the goal might be right, I'm troubled by the framing. When an LLM ingests documentation at training time, most of the HTML and the fancy styling disappears. So what remains is closer to a raw string, and that means carefully documented anti-pattern examples. Don't do this, here's the bad code. Go in alongside the good code. There's no don't. It's essentially the pink elephant problem. Tell someone, don't think of a pink elephant. Now what do they think of? If the documentation has a clear structure that's independent of how it's rendered, you don't really have to choose between serving humans and serving machines. The same source produces HTML for one, Markdown or JSON or whatever it is for the other. And we don't try to add some structure on top of this to serve the machine, because the structure is already there and we just hand it to the machine. So that, to me, suggests that the question isn't as much, how do we make our output look more legible to AI? But it might be, what is the documentation before it becomes output at all? So we're building this. We're building a pipeline where the documentation exists as structure first, and the output format is a decision that's made later on. So same source, different renderers, HTML for humans, reading reference pages, etc. Markdown or JSON for machines that need something that's leaner. It's not finished, but it's it's real work and it's in progress. Now, the hard part is knowing whether or not this works. With SEO, you could at least study page rank back in the day, right? So you could test a change, and in a few days, you'd see the ranking move. But there is no GPT rank, and there's no Claude rank. Nobody publishes a scoring function for how well did the LLM understand your documentation. So I'm kind of left doing what amounts to science without good instruments. Change something, feed it to a model, see if the output is less wrong. 6-9 months later, when there's a new model, that's not engineering, that's guessing with extra steps. And I'd like to do better than that, and I don't really know how yet. I'm quite sure that some of you are moving fast on AI and don't want to hear any philosophical objection. And some of you probably look at AI-generated C++ code and feel something between amusement on one hand and complete horror on the other. I think the documentation layer matters either way. So whatever happens with AI over the next couple of years, it's going to be important for us. If AI gets better, good documentation probably helps make it reliable. And if it doesn't get better, good docs will keep humans productive. So to me, the work is much the same. The principle is the same. And what's different is the order of operations. What I hope to achieve from this talk is that I'm interested in learning more about how people are thinking about the documentation layer, not just for Qt, generally for when developing software. So what makes a reference page actually useful to an LLM? What makes it useful for a human? Does it matter whether the content was written for humans first? So if you've seen LLMs get something wrong, if you can pinpoint documentation to sources for the wrongness, I want to hear about it. If you think the human's first framing is wrong and that there's a better principle, come tell me that too. I love rethinking things. So I'll be in GatherTown during the breaks, and you can find me on Discord. Please come argue with me, and thank you.